Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Marzano, a principal analyst over at eMarketer. I'm really excited for our discussion this morning. We're going to be talking about the massive growth opportunity in retail media, specifically against the context of the evolving consumer's path to purchase. Before I preview a little bit more about our discussion, I'd love if my panelists could introduce themselves. So if we could hear your name, your company, and a little bit about your role, that would be great.
Perfect. I can start. I'm Carrie Sweeney. I lead our retail partnerships at Pinterest. I'm based in Chicago, and I have long-standing relationships with these guys, and I do both brand direct building and the retail media side, so interesting to see those two come together.
Hi, everyone. Matt Drzewicki, Vice President of Partner Solutions Group for Target at Roundel. Thank you, somebody in the audience. I've been with Target just about 2.5 years. Prior to that, a little over a decade at Google. Prior to that, started my career at Velasys.
Perfect. Hi, Eric Ternowski. I work for Kenvue, previously Johnson & Johnson Consumer Health. So we have brands like Neutrogena, Tylenol, Aveeno, Motrin. And I lead a group called Connected Commerce. So we've brought together media, consumer experience, shopper marketing, and e-commerce under one umbrella.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think there's a high likelihood that our audience has some familiarity with the headlines around retail media's massive growth. But if you'll humor me, there's a few salient points I want to mention because I think they set a good foundation for why our conversation today is so timely. So when we talk about retail media here in the US, this is an ad spend channel that is worth about $55 billion today. In 4 years, this is an ad spending channel that will be worth $130 billion. So by 2028, every dollar spent on retail media will represent 1 out of every $4 spent on all media. Now, at eMarketer, we're forecasting the majority of those ad investments will continue to go to on-site placements, things like sponsored products and on-site display. But we're also seeing in our forecast that off-site ad spending is growing at a faster rate. So in 2024, we're going to see the volume of ad spend allocated to off-site display exceed on-site display for the first time. And it will continue on that trajectory. So on one side, retailers are investing in capabilities that are necessary to enable a full funnel ecosystem, but advertisers are also increasingly reconsidering their retail media strategies in order to ensure they're creating unified approaches that meet the consumer where they are. So in order to unlock all of this potential, it feels like it's never been more imperative to really understand the evolution in the consumer's journey. So that's what we'll be discussing today. My panel will be sharing research, insights, and best practices that reflect that evolution. So to get us started, I'd like to kick off the conversation. I think each of you has a unique perspective into just how consumer behavior is evolving. So what is top of mind for you in terms of what the shopping journey looks like today? Matt, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I always start with a focus group of one, and we all do this, right? We're all shoppers, we're all consumers. And so we have research, there's research elsewhere. It's very clear how the shopping journey has and is evolving. The target guest, the target shopper, is very much at the center of that evolution. And we see them shopping really, quite frankly, all the time, seamlessly, physically, digitally, socially, right? And it is, we really do believe that it is here to stay. I think what's interesting when we look at some of our research specifically is really the intersection of some of those different ways that they're shopping. So for example, we know that about 76% of our shoppers are using .com or the app inside of our stores while they are shopping, right? That stat actually increases to about 90% of our guests when you look at a Gen Z audience, which is pretty significant. One of the other examples I love to give, Target has really one of the industry-leading drive-up and pickup opportunities for our guests. 20% of our guests who use that service, so they place a digital order on their app, show up in our parking lots. 20% of our guests actually have their order fulfilled. They open up their trunk, it gets loaded up. Thank you very much. They take their Starbucks that is delivered out to their car, they close their trunk, they pull out of that spot, go into another parking spot in a Target, and walk in to do their Target run. right? When you think about, again, that intersection of those behaviors, it's a great example of really what I consider to be the quintessential omni-channel shopper constantly shopping.
Awesome. Carrie, I don't know if we want to go over to you.
Yeah, I think Matt and I talk a lot about how we serve generally the same consumer base. There's a ton of overlap between Pinners and Target guests. So I think we echo a lot of the things that Target's seeing. Interestingly, we see the fact that Gen Z is coming to Pinterest more than ever. It's our biggest and our fastest growing audience, which is kind of surprising to some people. People think of other platforms first. And we're kind of the rare app that's aging down, which we love.
Yes.
So they're teaching us something similar to the Target guest about just how that already convoluted purchase journey is getting kind of even more fragmented and circuitous. So we have about 500 million users, 500 billion pins. So we kind of have this treasure trove to mine to see how people are flipping between inspiration and action. And I think the interesting thing, probably not surprising, but backed up by all the data, is just it changes on a dime. You used to see a much more linear funnel, and now as we've made every image on Pinterest shoppable, we'll see people spend days and weeks and months researching a purchase, or sometimes 20 minutes and flip really quickly. So I think Gen Z is unpredictable. Maybe if that's a prediction about them. They're a little bit hard to put in a box, but I think that we see kind of that personalization is more critical than ever, no doubt.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful too that you can be there in the moment where they feel ready to purchase, right, with those functionalities that you've enabled.
Yeah, exactly. We see the vast majority, 96% or so of our searches are unbranded, and most of them are 1 to 3 words. So they're really short. They want inspiration. They don't know what they want yet, and then they flip quickly. They know it when they see it. When they see, a Roundel or a Target or a Kenvue pin, they're like, oh, that scratches the itch. That's it. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Awesome. What are you seeing over at Kenvue?
Yeah, I think there's no surprising insight that the concept of this funnel is fundamentally collapsed, right? And every awareness point is a conversion point. Every conversion point is a brand building opportunity. And we see the same thing. When we look at the data, we work with some different partners to understand really how do consumers' journeys work across the full internet and all the different touch points they have along the way. You see all of these varied paths. There really isn't sort of a common flow. And so you really have to meet the consumer where they are, make sure you're present any place they're thinking about your brand's products, the need states that you serve, and make sure you have the right relevant touch points there to help move them through the funnel wherever that purchase occurs, whether it's in store, online, drive up and pick up, et cetera. And so that's really what we've tried to figure out how to do, is how do you live in that world, right? A lot of the things that we've done in the past to simplify the complexity of what we operate in has been to segment those pieces out, right? And to have brand teams thinking about the consumer when she's sitting on the couch at home, scrolling her Instagram feed and watching Netflix, and different teams thinking about the consumer when they're in the store and the shopper. We even call them different things, right? And the reality is those are all the same people. Every one of those touch points is the same. And so how do you understand the relationships between those things, serve the right, most relevant content at the right point in time to help drive that consideration, that awareness, that conversion, whatever that objective is at the moment, and realizing that the boundaries between those objectives just aren't as firm as they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That tees me up perfectly for what I want to talk about next, which is that when we think about retail media, this is a channel that has long been it's got a strong association with lower funnel tactics, and it's maybe been relegated to that lower funnel part of the journey. But as our understanding of the consumer journey and our visibility into it improves, there's this opportunity to take that retailer data that's made retail media so successful and leverage it as a connective tissue throughout all the points in the journey. So how are retail media networks, and maybe specifically we can start with Roundel, evolving to keep pace, and then how should advertisers be adapting their strategy to make sure that they're taking advantage of this opportunity? And then I think bonus points if we can work in a case study or two that brings that concept to life.
Love a challenge of a bonus point available
Also
from the moderator.
Ever,
Yeah,
so
thank you. Okay, that's great. No, I mean, listen, first and foremost, performance is important, right? We're performance marketers to drive towards sales efficiently. We are a retailer at Target, our friends at Kenvue. We are all trying to drive product, full stop. There isn't a single one of us here who would say, no, that's not something that we are looking to do. At Roundel, we believe, and have believed for quite a while, though, that it is a yes and when it comes to our on-site media, along with how we partner with the likes of Pinterest and others from an off-platform perspective to drive greater, better results from a media perspective. We're very public in the industry that about 35% of our business from Roundel is actually off-platform media, which, Sarah, I think is different.
Yeah, that stands out a lot because in eMarketer's forecast, we're seeing offsite ad spend make up about 20% of the pie. So I'd say Roundel is quite a bit ahead there.
And again, we've known this and have been doing this for quite some time. Why it's very important for us again to work with partners like Pinterest and others. Why it's also very important that as part of our partnership with those organizations that we are focusing on closed loop measurement and making sure that we can actually understand the investment of off-platform media and what it drives directly down to the sale, both from an e-commerce standpoint as well as within our stores. So again, it's really important and foundational, I would say, to the work that we're doing with brands like Kenvue. And our studies and research actually show that again, it's a yes and is additive to the performance. So we've seen when you add 2 off-platform media to an on-site platform media plan that we actually drive about 1.5x from a ROAS perspective. You add a third offline media component and it goes up to about 2.5x in terms of the return. So really meaningful results when you start thinking about that combination of the two. I think from a case study perspective, there's a long-standing program with our friends at Kenvue and Target. In fact, I think we said it's a 17-year program.
17 years, yep.
Build your own first aid kit. And what started in its infancy, long before Eric and I were in our jobs and thinking about this, was really a program between Kenvue and Target merchants in store promoting this build your own first aid kit that over the years has really evolved and transformed again with the consumer, with the shopper, with the target guest that now includes kind of more mid and upper funnel type of media and partnering with Pinterest and putting videos on Pinterest to help augment this, putting display on target.com, all again in service to creating a 360-degree approach, including the aspect that we have in store. Again, you would think that can't get any, after 17 years, how much better can this program get? But I think this last year, we doubled the return on the program, and actually 50% of the shoppers or buyers as part of the program were new guests to the brand at Target. So pretty good performance again for a 17-year program. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you hit the most important part.
Captured it all. Okay, we'll share the bonus points with Sarah on the case study.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great example too of how to think about and how we think about where best to leverage these full funnel capabilities. Because once you move upper funnel, retail media stops being a specific special thing and just becomes media, right? And when we look at our measurement, we understand pretty precisely how our Roundel offsite media, whether that's run through Pinterest or straight display or other purposes, where that drives value, right? And we understand what the ROI is through our measurement. And the truth is, once you move upper funnel, that ROI isn't specifically focused just at Target. It affects the full marketplace, and we have to understand what that full value case is. Now we have to evaluate that media for what it is, right? And how does it compare against other, just working directly with Pinterest, for example. And what we've been able to do is to understand what are the data signals that matter to drive a relevant improvement in effectiveness that is worth a little bit less efficiency and cost because it drives that performance. It's different. It's still performance, but it's using performance tactics in a slightly different way. It's how do we drive that targeting, that relevancy in the message, right? Making sure that we're reaching the right people at the right time, less kind of spearfishing lower funnel execution, but it still has to work as an upper funnel tactic, as an awareness or consideration type of tactic. And so when you look at how we've worked with that model in particular, we've worked directly with Pinterest on what is that awareness driving measures. We're trying to reach a really broad audience there, so the targeting is less relevant. So how do we work with the base offerings there and the right keyword tagging and the right combination of our organic activity and leveraging the advertising capabilities there from a base upper funnel awareness. As we move into conversion, now we'll start to work with Roundel data and Roundel media through Pinterest, where we're starting to target people that we know are in the funnel and really good candidates from a conversion standpoint, and then we pull it all the way through to the execution. And I think the key pieces there, because when we're talking about this being now media as media, and affecting total marketplace performance, it's super critical that when we work on our retail execution side of it, that we have the full ecosystem of the target ecosystem optimized to capture as much of that as possible. And in this case, it's a great candidate because it's an exclusive program that we build together. There's co-investment on both sides around making it as big as it can be. And so in that case, it makes total sense to leverage kind of that full funnel activation across the Roundel ecosystem. And so I think it's really critical to understand what is the objective you're trying to drive, what matters in driving the most effective kind of effectiveness efficiency equation for that tactic, and where do these specific offerings bring really relevant pieces to the table that help us deliver that equation in a way that works comprehensively for us as retailer, or for us as brands, for the media network from a performance standpoint, and ultimately for our retail partners from a sales perspective as well.
Yeah, and I mean, well said. I think the underlying theme is that there aren't shortcuts. I think you guys took advantage of every best practice we've articulated that's data-driven, and similar to Matt, you know, when you add more off-platform partners, you usually see an increase in return. We know when you use more formats with us, you also see that amplification. So I think it's not rocket science, but I think the best part of this partnership was that openness to looking at those best practices. And I think what's unique to these guys is they actually brought us all together for a Kenvue and Roundel and Pinterest kind of media day to say, here's where all these data points kind of suggest we go. How do we bring this to life? And that's rare. Sometimes we do get caught up in, well, I'm going to spend with this platform direct and this through an RMN. And I think just the radical transparency is pretty remarkable, and the commitment to following through with the data points that we've laid out there. And we know when we see full funnel campaigns on Pinterest, ROAS goes up about 45%. So if you need any more stats to believe in the value of doing more than one simple thing and really kind of leaning into different formats and experiences, I think it pays off, and you guys are a testament to that and put the work in.
Yeah, and I think the partnership has been key to all of this, right? I think everybody brings a specific set of capabilities, of unique offerings and pieces to the equation, and we sit down at a table and say, how do we put this all together in a way that works for everybody, right? We need to understand everybody's individual incentives and constraints and parameters that they have to operate in, but when we can sit down and do that kind of work, we can say, hey, we understand what everyone's trying to achieve. I see what you're trying to do here, but if you can turn it 2 degrees this way, we can make this work a lot better for all of us. Those are those key capability discussions and partnership discussions that are kind of unlocking what I think is going to be the next generation of retail media, where it really moves from being kind of this trade-attached item, lower funnel focus, into how is it a great tool from a data, from a visibility, from a targeting, from a performance measurement standpoint that we can use to activate that total marketplace effectively.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful too to talk about this campaign that's a heritage campaign, right, for Target, and arguably is resonating well with customers and performing well, but thinking through like what are the new tools that we have to really support an evolution for this campaign and make sure it's reaching customers wherever they are. So we've talked about the next topic a little bit, but as retail media evolves and retail media networks grow their businesses, they are rapidly expanding into new arenas. And something that can certainly slow down progress is if stakeholders feel that they are working toward disparate or even contradictory goals, right? There's a lot of newness going on, a lot of new ways of working. Matt, I know that collaboration is one of the core pillars at Roundel. How is the notion of sort of collaboration coming to life for you on a day-to-day level as you and your team work through some of these newer arenas where you might have stakeholders who are less familiar with retail media, or you might have brands who are working in certain team structures or silos that aren't as conducive? And so I'd love to start with you, but yeah.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, I would say 2.5 years ago, I was up on a stage here at Adweek. I had really only been at Roundel and Target for about 20 minutes. I offered up some of my fresh eye perspectives in terms of what I was experiencing within retail media, as well as just within Roundel and working at Target. And I would say one of the things that surprised me when I would walk into many of the rooms with our partners is that it was, in many instances, just solely a salesperson from a manufacturer, a CPG salesperson there in the room, which was, or maybe a shopper marketer in the room, right? But one of the messages that that I had collectively within Roundel, as well as just broadly with all of our partners, is listen, there's plenty of seats at the table. We need to get more folks to the table to have these conversations. Retail media is still, to a certain degree, in its early stages, and so really there isn't one individual who owns all of this. There's also the complication that exists between a partner and a retailer in terms of that that relationship. So all to say, listen, we don't make it easy, and it's not easy, to collaborate and bring all these folks together. But I have to tell you, kudos, to Eric and Kenvue and their agency OneView and what they have created. Whenever I'm asked of what's a best-in-class example of organizational structure, aligned incentives, Eric and his team are the ones that I point to as they get it. Eric has already mentioned media is media, right? Things of that nature that says, listen, we need to be bringing everyone to the table. And he has structured his organization in a way that I think is really beneficial for us to be able to drive these types of partnerships, for us to be able to come together to one table. So again, don't want to steal your thunder there, but just want to acknowledge you and your agency and the way you're approaching things.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks for the partnership as well. And I think one of the things that we sat down and did is look at our own silos and say, hey, if I have different teams planning national media and retail media, I have sales teams, I have shopper teams, I've kind of chopped up all this work. I have teams focused on the digital shelf. Fundamentally, what we want to do is deliver a seamless experience to consumers, right? So how do we take our own structures out of it, align around that objective, and then think about what we need to do to pull that through collectively? And as we've done that, we identified what the incredible opportunities are when we coordinate all those activities, when media drives nationally and at the retail media networks, when the site experience online, when the shoppers go in there, tells the same message with consistent branding and consistent imagery, when the in-store experience is amplified and turned on at the same time, right? When all of those things are pulled together, that's when we see the best results. That's where we see consistently improved performance. It's really hard to do. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to execute, and we're not perfect at it by any means. We're still working on it. As we've done that, we've also gone back to our partners at Target and Roundel and said, hey, how do we help each other clear some of these silos, right? Because just like I have my silos on our side, Target has their silos too. You have merchants and the Roundel folks and the site ops, and all these folks own a little piece of that puzzle. And are there opportunities for us to tear down some of those silos and work collaboratively? And Target's been a really fantastic partner in leaning in. We had I think a really powerful Omni Day, we called it, back in July, where we brought all of those groups together from both sides. Kind of a shocking number of people, to be honest with you,
big
all
table.
in one room. Yeah, very big table. Yeah. And said, hey, how do we look at all this collaboratively? How do we understand what we could do if we can get there? How do we pull in our partners like Pinterest to the table as well and think about where they can be additive to that equation, right? And really just try to make all the pieces work together. And we're at the front end of a journey. It's by no means done, but I think we're moving in the right direction there as we really understand these ecosystems and how they interact with each other and the relatedness of the connectivity across these, right? We're generating so much data at all these touch points. How do we put that all to work? How do I understand sort of the signal based on how somebody is shopping the site and then use that signal when I'm thinking about what I show them and how I reach them on Pinterest offsite? All of these things are becoming fully converged together. It's creating a ton of complexity. I think technology is going to play a really key role in helping us really wrap our arms around that going forward. But it starts first with just making sure that we're zooming our perspective out wide enough to really see all the different pieces of it together.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's so powerful just to acknowledge the complexity and the fact that it is hard. And success is going to mean sharing learnings and best practices with one another as we work to make sure that we're all working towards shared incentives that motivate all the stakeholders. We have a few minutes left. It is October. We find ourselves on the eve of yet another holiday season, and it's certainly time to start thinking about 2025 and what it has in store. So if each of you could summarize what your learnings from this past year have top of mind for you and that you'd want to share with the audience as we head into holiday and even into 2025. Carrie, we haven't started with you yet.
Yeah,
I
can dive in. I think the primary thing to keep in mind this time of year with Pinterest is that pinners are planners. So this will probably make everyone feel really disorganized, but over a third of our pinners had already started all of their holiday gifting back in September. And Today's October 8th, and so if you're not already on the platform, yeah, you're apparently behind. So am I. These are apparently very organized people. So we do see, just kind of going back to that first question about the purchase journey. Right now, people are in the thick of it. We've kind of mined the signals we sit on to make the app more and more curated for gift giving, which partners, like Kenvue and Roundel can take advantage of. So go back to the app where you now can see like a holiday moments part of the app, which will curate gifts for you or for others in your life based on what you've been saving and pinning. So I think personalization is key. I think we continue to see, as we've leaned into lower funnel ad formats as well. We're always known for inspiration, but we've launched a lot of promotional content, new content to lean into the shopping windows. We're in Circle Week right now, and so
Thank you.
Yeah. We're
Target store right across the street.
yeah, pop in. We're seeing a lot of different and faster conversion behavior then. So I think this holiday we're keeping eyes, and we've seen eMarketer talk about our people continuing to spend in surges on these particular weeks, or is it going to be more spread out? We're curious to see either, but I think the benefit of listening to our consumers is that the experience is there whenever they want to just browse or purchase or flip back and forth.
Absolutely. Thank you. Matt, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. I would just say one, as we approach the season, no one does seasons like Target, right? If you think about one of the things that we are best at as really a multi-department store, if you think about being able to walk into the store, go into the app, walk in, get the family Christmas pajamas, walk through the store, and put together the basket for the things you're preparing for a holiday party, as well as swing by and get gift cards as kind of quick hand-away gifts. Like it is the full experience, and so you will and our guests will continue to enjoy seasonal magic as they walk into our stores, as well as they engage with our app and our site here as they walk into the season this year. I would just go back and call back to the earlier statements in terms of the physical, digital, and social aspect of their engagement with us and our brand. And as we look into 2025, you'll continue to see more from us at Roundel, both in store in terms of being able to create more of those connections and take advantage of those I got it at Target moments serendipitously inside of our stores. Along with continuing to engage with many of our partners from a social perspective, again, as we continue to evolve our capabilities there in driving results for our brands.
Awesome.
Yeah, the only piece I would add is it's an extra noisy season, right? Between the holiday season and the political landscape, the volume's turned up everywhere, and I think that makes it even more important to make sure that your execution is super tight, so that you're showing up in the most relevant ways at the most relevant points in time to the most relevant people with the most relevant message to make sure that you can actually break through and not just be kind of another voice shouting into the void, because there's a lot of that out there right now, and I think it really elevates the craft that sits behind doing this well. And that's been my big kind of insight and learning, and as we're looking forward into 2025 is, having spent a year and a half now trying to operationalize this model where we put all the pieces together, the theory is easy, the practice is incredibly hard, and it requires excellent resources, it requires people willing to think outside of the box, and people with a real attention to detail to work across boundaries that historically have been really rigid within our teams, and it requires really good partners to make that all happen. And so I think that's where we're focused, is how do we continue to strengthen those ties, how do we continue to build those muscles that we're building as we work our way through this process, and make sure that we're putting to use all of the different capabilities that we have to really break through and to reach people when it matters with a message that means something to them.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to attempt to succinctly summarize some of my key takeaways from our conversation today. I think it's abundantly clear that the consumer doesn't differentiate between upper funnel and lower funnel tactics, so it's imperative that we challenge any preconceived notions or ways of doing business that are organized in those silos. We're also at an exciting point in retail media's evolution. We're moving into new arenas off-site and in store. It's giving advertisers this great opportunity to leverage the power of retailer data in new ways. But in order for any of this to be successful and reach its full potential, it's all about partnership and collaboration, transparency, and open learnings. thank you all for the discussion today, and thanks to our audience as well.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.